We turn now to Republican Senator Roger Marshall, who joins us this morning from Wichita, Kansas. Welcome to Face the Nation. So,
Margaret, great to be with you. I know it's going to be a great discussion.
Yeah, I know you were an OBGYN in practice for decades before you ran for office. This past week, the HHS secretary underwent intense questioning from both Democratic lawmakers and some of your fellow Republicans who were also doctors. Take a listen.
Secretary Kennedy, in your confirmation hearings, you promised to uphold the highest standards for vaccines. Since then, I've grown deeply concerned.
I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
I mean, that's the Republican whip, and that is the chair of the committee, Bill Cassidy. Why do you think they're off base in their concern?
Look, President Trump chose Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be a disruptor to the CDC, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's focused on making the CDC more transparent, to make it more trustworthy right now. Right now, Americans don't trust the CDC, so he is literally turning that place upside down. I respect what my colleagues are saying, but I think that this whole issue today, or in that meeting, was about vaccines. In my humble opinion, not every person needs every vaccine. And I don't think there's many children out there that need 76 jabs by the time they're old enough to vote. But before you label me a non-vaxxer person, look, I've raised money for polio vaccinations. The MMR is a great vaccine. It saved thousands of lives. Vaccines overall have saved hundreds of millions of lives, but not every person needs every vaccine, and we just want to empower parents and the doctors to make great decisions.
Okay, I just want to unpack a few things you said there, and because we want to be very careful in this very heated environment. When you say you have a problem with trusting the CDC, it was just a few weeks ago, a gunman walked onto the CDC campus in Atlanta and shot the place up. Do you care to respond to that? And do you think that we need to be careful when we are discussing the CDC and public health officials right now?
Well, look, of course I condemn that shooting, but the lack of confidence in the CDC goes back to what the CDC did during COVID. They misguided us, maybe lied to us even, about the origins of COVID and how to treat it as well. And the vaccine, they overpromised what the vaccine could do as well. So that's where the distrust is. And now Bobby Kennedy's in there trying to clean up that distrust and trying to give American parents and grandparents and the doctors the right information, transparent information to make good decisions.
Okay, but just before we talk about other vaccines specific to COVID and what you just said, with the CDC, the pandemic was during the Trump administration. It began during the Trump administration, and Operation Warp Speed was a presidential directive by Trump, which some of your fellow Republicans say he deserves the Nobel Prize for because it stopped the pandemic. So did you trust the CDC and Operation Warp Speed under President Trump, or are you saying you don't think the president deserves the prize for that shot?
Yeah, look, President Trump absolutely deserves a Nobel Prize. That vaccine saved millions of lives.
Okay,
but it's such a different time.
That's something that sounded very contradictory to that.
I disagree with you. I think it's such a different time today than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we had a novel virus. None of us had any immunity to it. It was a strange virus made in a lab in Wuhan, China. But today, on average, Americans have had COVID 5 times. We now have natural immunity to it, and not everybody needs the vaccine. So both things can be true. And that's why when you have people that don't understand science, that don't understand medicine, why they don't get it. It was a different day then than it is today.
Okay, but people do understand that when they go into their pharmacy and have a problem getting a shot, because in many states they are now told they need to go back and get a prescription, that the effect here of the Kennedy policies are making it more difficult, even if they fall into categories where they should be able to get a shot. You would acknowledge that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're making this way, way too complicated. That, look, vaccines are a medicine, and just like you need a prescription
but
to
you
get
said he's
a GLP-1.
Right, you said he's disrupting, but effectively what you were hearing the Republican whip John Barrasso and the Republican Senator Bill Cassidy talk about was the interruption of the availability of vaccine. Cassidy said, I would say effectively we're denying people vaccines. So that's not Margaret Brennan, that's Bill Cassidy.
Yeah, look, I disagree, respectfully disagree. Think about this. What the CDC is now saying is you're over the age of 65, you can have the vaccine. It's interesting that the UK and France have set 75 and 80 as the age. So all you need to do is email or call your doctor's nurse and get a prescription, and you should be able to get it. If you're over the age of 6 months, it's probably a good idea to talk to your doctor. And all your nurse has to do is look at the chart and say, oh, little Johnny's got asthma, definitely needs the vaccination as well. So I think we're making this way too complicated. Why does everybody lose their minds when it comes to COVID vaccine? Why can't we let the doctor and the parents decide, let the patients decide? There's so many more important things out there we should be talking about. Chronic diseases, 20% of our adolescents have obesity, mental health problems, and are on a prescription drug. There's so many more things to talk about than just COVID vaccines.
No, but I think we're complaining a few things, including the operational aspect of this. I think people get frustrated with their insurance companies. I think people get frustrated with their pharmacies and the implementation of health policy. And you know that that's more complicated than just saying we're changing a few things here. There are big implications. And I want to talk to you about it because you said you like the MMR vaccine, you like DPT, polio, smallpox. You don't like hepatitis B, which is a liver infection, and you don't think newborn kids need to be vaccinated against it. Senator Cassidy, who's a liver doctor, said he treated poor and underserved patients and that it can be a life-altering condition for the rest of your life. So why isn't it a compelling argument to you that this should be available?
So I delivered a baby every day for 25 years. We did a hepatitis test on every one of my patients. At the time of delivery, if that mom has a negative hepatitis test, she's in a stable monogamous relationship, she's not doing IV drugs, she's not letting her baby going to play in a sandbox full of used needles, then there's zero chance that that baby's going to have hepatitis. Now, there's other moms or other babies that do need it, okay? We need to be more specific. We can't be overly prescriptive. If that mom has not had prenatal care, if she's an IV drug abuser, if she's not in a stable relationship, a whole lot of reasons, but we need to pick and choose. Not every baby needs a hepatitis vaccine. And especially on day number 1, what are these vaccines doing to mess with the immune system of that particular baby as well? So that's my concerns. Not every baby needs hepatitis B vaccine.
Okay, and I understand it can also be spread from in a household sharing toothbrushes or razors, or, for example, if her partner was not monogamous, the pregnant lady, for example. But I hear your point here that you want this to be more bespoke, like more picking and choosing. But others would argue here that in doing that, you're going to drive down immunization rates overall if you create broader doubt in vaccines, and that it's a slippery slope here. Are you at all concerned that that is going to be the takeaway?
Look, Anthony Fauci did more to create vaccine hesitancy than Bobby Kennedy will do in his 4 years or 8 years, however long he is as secretary. That's where the problem is. So don't blame Bobby Kennedy for the problems created by Anthony Fauci. But I'm just telling you.
I'm asking you about what you said about the hepatitis B vaccine.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wasn't talking about Bobby Kennedy or Secretary Kennedy. I was talking about you and what you said about the hepatitis B vaccine. And are you concerned that picking and choosing these things like this bespoke concept of giving more choice, that it also has the effect of undermining confidence in vaccines?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats want a one-size-fits-all prescription for everybody. And I'm telling you, not everybody reads the book. It does exactly like that. I have confidence in doctors, in nurses, and parents and grandparents to make these decisions. I don't think that we should have one government policy that dictates every one of these vaccines. I think local policy, local schools, if they want to have requirements, what Florida did was a bridge too far.
Okay.
But how about just a little common sense? Just a little common sense would go a long ways here.
Okay, because President Trump said he had some doubts about that Florida statement you just mentioned there too, and that he likes a lot of vaccines. Before I let you go, Secretary Kennedy founded this group that is arguing that women taking Tylenol or acetaminophen might be putting their babies at risk. They claim there's a link to neurodevelopmental disorders. Would you tell a pregnant woman to take a Tylenol and not feel worried about it?
Look, Tylenol is a Category B drug. I've given it to lots of patients. It's on the approved list. But that being said, I try to tell my patients, my pregnant women, not to take anything because we don't know what we don't know. I'm very cautious. You know, why do 20% of our children have some type of a mental health illness right now? Why do we have so many peanut allergies? Why do we have so many people with autoimmune diseases? So we don't know. What we don't know, we don't know. And I want gold standard studies to help us figure this out and sort it out. But as far as I know, Tylenol is okay in pregnancy.
Thank you, Senator. We'll leave it there for today.